What if a simple bouquet of roses held the power to change a life? What if, hidden behind a young boy's trembling hands and a handful of worn coins, there was a story of love, desperation, and hope? In a busy flower shop, where most customers paused only for beauty, a 12-year-old boy stopped for something far deeper. Roses he couldn't afford but desperately needed. When Keanu Reeves, a stranger at that moment, stepped in to help, he thought he was only buying flowers. But what if that small act led him into a journey of compassion, sacrifice, and the fight for a life hanging by a thread? Would you have followed the boy just to make sure he was okay? Join us in reflecting on this true story. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification for more daily stories like this. Share your thoughts in the comments and let us know where you are what. For we would love to hear from you. The flower shop sat on the corner of a bustling city street, a pocket of calm amid the urban clamor. When pedestrians hurried by outside, they were often drawn to pause at its wide windows. Inside, the shop revealed a kaleidoscope of blooms, from fiery red roses in elegant paper sleeves to clusters of sunflowers that captured every stray beam of light. The sweet fragrance of blossoms mingled with the rustic scent of wooden shelves, instantly transporting visitors away from honking cars and hurried conversations. That afternoon, the bell above the door gave a faint jingle as a young boy stepped in. His shoulders were squared with a purpose, but there was a tremor in his hands that betrayed his nerves. He couldn't have been older than 12, dressed in a worn green t-shirt and scuffed sneakers. An old backpack hung from his shoulders, its frayed straps telling tales of years gone by. If the flower shop was a sanctuary, he looked like someone uncertain whether he was allowed inside at all. The boy paused near a display of assorted bouquets, momentarily overwhelmed by the vibrant array. There were lilies wrapped in shimmering cellophane, carnations tied with pastel ribbons, and delicate sprays of baby's breath adding softness to each arrangement. His gaze swept back and forth, searching for something very specific. His eyes finally settled on a bouquet of red roses perched at the center of a polished wooden shelf. A gentle gold wrap and a satin bow gave the bouquet a sense of quiet luxury. He approached with cautious steps, as though the flowers might vanish if he moved too quickly. With trembling fingers, he lifted the bouquet, noticing how the petals caught the light, their crimson hue bright against the golden wrap. For a moment, his eyes flicked to the small price tag. A flicker of hesitation crossed his face, and his shoulders seemed to slump, as if absorbing a blow. But he swallowed hard and pressed the bouquet to his chest, determined to take it to the counter anyway, moving as if each step required conscious effort. He finally reached the register. The shop clerk, an older woman with a kindly smile, greeted him. "Those roses are lovely, aren't they?" she said, making an effort to put him at ease. He nodded but didn't speak. Instead, he carefully placed the bouquet on the counter. From his backpack, the boy scooped out a handful of coins, mostly small denominations with a few battered bills. The coins clinked against the countertop, echoing in the quiet shop. He counted them out with shaky hands, sorting them into little piles. The clerk's gentle smile dimmed when she realized the total fell well short of the bouquet's cost. She glanced at the boy apologetically. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. That's not quite enough." He stiffened, his eyes glued to the roses. For a split second, he looked as though he might burst into tears. The color drained from his face, and he stood rooted to the spot, unsure whether to argue or walk away. Mustering courage, he whispered, "I need these flowers." The clerk's expression softened. Measured voice interrupted from behind. "Let me see if I can help." All heads turned. Near the entrance, a man stood in a simple, dark coat. His posture was relaxed, but he carried himself with a quiet confidence. Tousled hair partially shaded his thoughtful eyes, and a slight smile touched his lips. It was Keanu Reeves, recognized worldwide for his roles on the big screen, yet seeming wholly unassuming in that moment. The clerk blinked in surprise while the boy stared, uncertain whether this intervention was some sort of trick. Keanu approached, his voice as calm as a gentle breeze. "Those are beautiful roses," he said, casting a quick glance at the boy's trembling hands. "They must be for someone special." The boy nodded, looking torn between hope and embarrassment. "They are," he mumbled, barely audible. Keanu looked at the clerk, then at the bouquet. His expression conveyed the easiest of solutions. He intended to pay the difference. But just as he reached into his pocket, the boy pulled the roses closer, as though reluctant to accept help. Realizing the boy's hesitation, Keanu kept his voice warm yet gentle. "If it's all right with you, I can cover what's missing," he offered. No strings attached. A swirl of emotions played across the boy's face. Relief, gratitude, and something else, deeper and heavier. He lowered his gaze. "Thank you," he said at last, sounding both grateful and conflicted. The clerk rang up the sale, handing the boy the roses. Keanu paid quietly, slipping the receipt into his coat pocket. The air felt charged with a story unspoken, a tension beyond the simple purchase of flowers. The boy lingered for a moment, clutching the bouquet so tightly his knuckles turned white. Then, as if driven by a sudden rush of urgency, he muttered a second, "Thank you," and hurried out the door. Keanu watched him leave, puzzled by the intensity in the boy's eyes. Something had stirred in him, a concern that those roses meant far more than a small act of kindness could resolve. He gave a polite nod to the clerk and stepped outside, following the boy's rapidly retreating form onto the busy sidewalk. An unexplainable sense of responsibility tugged at him. He didn't know the boy's name or why these flowers mattered so much, but he intended to find out. Outside the flower shop, Keanu Reeves spotted the boy weaving through the foot traffic. The afternoon sun bathed the street in a hazy warmth, illuminating passing cars and pedestrians who barely noticed anything beyond their own errands. The boy moved with a hurried purpose, clutching the bouquet of red roses as if it were a lifeline. Struck by curiosity and by a sense he couldn't entirely articulate, Keanu decided to follow. The boy turned onto a narrower street lined with older buildings, each sporting peeling paint and cracked windows. The shift in scenery was immediate. Fewer people, less noise, an air of gentle neglect. The muffled sound of the city's main roads gave way to the echo of occasional footsteps. Keanu kept back just far enough to avoid drawing attention. Every so often, the boy glanced over his shoulder, looking tense, almost nervous. Noticing no obvious pursuer, he pressed on, quickening his stride. Eventually, the street widened to reveal a small park with patchy grass and a few tired-looking benches. A rusty playground set squeaked as a gust of wind rattled it. The boy cut straight across, roses still clutched tightly, as if mindful of every second lost. Keanu felt a swirl of questions. Who were the flowers for? Was someone waiting at home? The boy couldn't have had many resources. His outfit was worn, and he had clearly struggled to pay for the bouquet. Yet the unwavering determination in his eyes suggested a mission that went beyond a mere gift for a friend or teacher. Something much deeper was at play, and Keanu was determined to uncover it. After crossing the park, the boy entered a side street that led to a busy avenue once more. The city's bustle roared back to life. Honking cars, people hailing cabs, workers on lunch breaks scurrying with takeout. Though the boy seemed small in the chaos, his shoulders remained squared with purpose. Keanu stayed close behind, weaving through the crowd with the ease of someone used to large, busy spaces but wanting to remain inconspicuous. Suddenly, the boy veered toward an imposing structure with large glass doors. Even from a distance, Keanu recognized the building, a hospital. The bright, sterile sign announcing its name gave it away immediately. A faint dread crept over him as he realized where this might be headed. The boy paused at the entrance, hugging the roses more fiercely than ever. Then, taking one final glance behind him, he slipped inside. Feeling a mix of concern and resolve, Keanu followed. The hospital lobby was a swirl of motion. Patients in wheelchairs, visitors huddled by reception desks, and staff hustling from one hallway to another. The boy pressed on with single-minded focus toward the bank of elevators. Keanu tried to close the distance, but the doors slid shut just as he reached them. Frustrated, he scanned the panel to see which button the boy had pressed. The second floor lit up. Opting for the stairwell, Keanu jogged up 2 flights. The corridor upstairs contrasted sharply with the busy lobby. Fewer voices, a hush underpinned by the distant beeping of monitors. Signs indicated specific wards, including an arrow pointing to the intensive care unit, ICU. Following the arrow, Keanu found himself at a set of double doors. Through the small windows, he could see the boy stepping into a nearby room. The sign on the door read, Room 214. Keanu moved closer, careful to remain out of immediate view. Through the door's glass pane, he glimpsed a woman lying motionless in a hospital bed, monitors tracking her vitals. Tubes and wires surrounded her, painting a stark medical landscape. The boy advanced quietly, his face a mixture of determination and deep worry. He placed a bouquet of roses on a nearby table with surprising delicacy for someone so young. Then he pulled a chair close to the bed and gently took the woman's hand. The fleeting look in his eyes revealed more than words could. This wasn't a casual visit. The boy's entire world seemed to hinge on the woman's condition. A nurse passed behind Keanu, giving him a quick, questioning glance. He lowered his gaze, uncertain how to explain himself. But a wave of compassion swept through him. He needed to know more. Quietly, he approached the nurse in the hallway. "Excuse me," Keanu said in a hushed tone. "I'm sorry to bother you, but the boy in room 214, do you know anything about his situation?" She studied his face, registering concern rather than intrusion. With a slight sigh, she said, "That's his mother. She's been here for a while now. Heart condition, very severe. He visits almost every day with flowers. He seems too young to carry all that weight." Her words made Keanu's chest tighten. It explained the boy's desperation. The need for those roses was not merely sentimental. It was an act of love, possibly a final lifeline he wanted to offer his mother. "Thank you," he whispered to the nurse, stepping back. He glanced into the room again. The boy now sat in silence, face etched with worry, holding his mother's hand as though it was the only thing tethering her to life. For a moment, Keanu debated whether to knock or let them be. Ultimately, he stayed outside, unwilling to intrude on such a private scene, but unable to walk away. As the monitor beeped softly in the background, he could see the woman's shallow breathing and the boy's eyes brimming with unspoken fears. Keanu felt an ache he couldn't quite put into words. He understood heartbreak and struggle in his own way. But watching a child shoulder so much sorrow felt almost unbearable. With a resolved breath, he turned and headed down the hallway, spurred by a single, powerful thought. He had the means to help, and he would. The boy's devotion demanded more than a sympathetic gaze. Keanu knew that a small act of kindness had led him here, but now a bigger mission was calling, one he couldn't ignore. Chapter 3, approximately 700 words. That evening, Keanu Reeves retreated to the quiet of his apartment. The day's events churned in his mind like an unresolved chord. After seeing the boy and his mother in the ICU, he felt both compelled and unsettled. He paced the living room floor, thinking of ways to help, yet uncertain how best to proceed. He finally settled at his desk, his laptop open, and began making calls. His first conversation was with a friend familiar with charitable cases and hospital bureaucracy. "I need some information about a patient," Keanu explained softly, careful not to mention names outright. "There's a family that can't afford a critical surgery. I just want to know if there's any existing fund or aid, or how to set one up quickly." His friend was thorough. Over the next hour, Keanu took notes, scribbling down numbers and program details. There were charities, but the approval process was often slow. "Time might be an issue," Keanu muttered, recalling the woman's condition. "I'm not sure how long she has." By midnight, he had a plan, albeit a skeletal one. He would cover the surgical costs if the hospital would allow an anonymous donor. He also wanted to ensure that aftercare wouldn't be a crushing financial burden. Organizing such a contribution required some behind-the-scenes legwork, but if done correctly, the boy would never have to watch his mother suffer without hope again. The following morning found Keanu in conversation with the hospital's billing department. He navigated the labyrinth of fees, formalities, and legal disclaimers. The number they quoted was staggering, but not beyond his capacity. Instead of balking, he requested they prepare the necessary paperwork. "Please keep my involvement anonymous," he emphasized. "The family doesn't need to know who's paying. Just promise me the surgery will be scheduled as soon as possible." One of the staff members hesitated, sensing the magnitude of what was being offered. "Sir, are you sure? This is a substantial amount." "Yes," Keanu replied without hesitation. "I want no delays. If it means paying in full up front, I'm ready to do that." Later that afternoon, he returned to the hospital, though he kept a discreet distance. Stepping off the elevator onto the second floor, he saw the boy again, perched on the same hallway bench as before. In his hands was another bouquet of roses, likely less pristine than the first, but lovingly arranged. His backpack lay beside him, unzipped at the top, revealing leftover stems and crumpled tissue paper. The boy seemed to be mustering the courage to enter his mother's room. Keanu approached quietly, stopping a few steps away. "Mind if I sit here?" he asked, maintaining a gentle tone. The boy looked up, recognition flickering in his eyes. He shrugged, neither inviting nor rejecting. Keanu settled onto the bench, inhaling the hospital's antiseptic smell. For a moment, neither spoke. The corridor was filled with the distant hum of machines and hushed footsteps of nurses. Eventually, Keanu turned slightly toward the boy. "I saw you in the flower shop," he said softly. "Those were beautiful roses." The boy nodded, hugging the bouquet a bit tighter. "She loves roses," he murmured, voice quivering. "I'm afraid if I don't bring them, she'll forget the things she used to love." Keanu's heart clenched. It was impossible not to be moved by the boy's earnest devotion. "I'm sorry your mom's sick," Keanu offered, "but you shouldn't have to handle this alone. Is there anyone else, family, friends, who can help?" The boy shook his head, and Keanu noticed tears brimming at the corners of his eyes. "It's just us. My dad left years ago. She's all I have." His voice cracked. He swallowed hard, trying to steady himself. "The doctors say she needs a surgery soon, or—" He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Keanu placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "What if I told you the hospital might move forward with the surgery soon?" A spark of hope flitted across the boy's face, but it quickly retreated, replaced by doubt. "We don't have that kind of money. They won't do it without payment. It might be taken care of," Keanu reassured him gently, choosing his words carefully. "Sometimes, help comes from unexpected places." The boy stared at him, confusion and longing swirling in his expression. "Why would anyone do that for us?" he asked, voice trembling with both skepticism and hope. "Because sometimes it only takes one person to see what you're going through," Keanu replied. "And sometimes that's all it takes to turn things around." Before the boy could respond, a nurse emerged from the ICU. Spotting them, she approached, wearing an expression that hovered between professional detachment and compassion. "The doctor wants to speak with you," she said to the boy, nodding toward the door. The boy stood, still clutching the roses. He looked at Keanu one last time, as if silently pleading for an explanation that would make sense of it all. Keanu offered a small, comforting nod. "Go on," he whispered. "Be with your mom." As the boy slipped inside, Keanu exhaled. He felt the enormity of the situation press down on him. This was no script, no cinematic feel-good moment. It was real, raw life, and a child's future depended on timely, decisive intervention. Rising from the bench, he resolved to finalize everything that day. He would arrange the finances, confirm the surgery schedule, and ensure anonymity. His phone buzzed with a message from the hospital billing contact, confirming the receipt of funds. Keanu's heart lifted. One hurdle down, but many unknowns remained. Had they scheduled the operation soon enough? Would the mother's condition hold steady until then? Pulling his coat tighter, he headed toward the elevator, hoping that the weight in his chest would ease once he heard definitive news. Within 48 hours, the hospital staff sprang into action. Thanks to the anonymous donation, the surgical team scheduled the mother's procedure without delay. Once the date was confirmed, the ICU nurses hinted to the boy that a friend had ensured his mother's care would move forward. They didn't share details, only that the financial barrier was gone, replaced by an opportunity for hope. On the evening before the surgery, Keanu slipped into the hospital once more. He kept his head low, wearing a simple cap and jacket to avoid drawing attention. Reaching the second floor, he peered through the window of room 214. The boy was there, his usual bouquet of roses placed on the bedside table. His mother, pale but conscious, seemed to be listening as he quietly told her something. Though they were separated by glass, Keanu could sense an undercurrent of relief in the boy's posture, less tension in his shoulders, more softness in his eyes. He had no desire to interrupt their private moment, but he hoped to glean whether the boy knew about the surgical arrangement. Just then, a nurse approached from behind, gently touching his arm to gain his attention. "Tomorrow is the day," she whispered, glancing toward the room. "He's been told the surgery is set. He doesn't know who made it possible, but I'm sure he's grateful." Keanu nodded, unable to tear his eyes away from the sight of the boy gently stroking his mother's hand. He said softly. "I just hope it's not too late." "The doctors are cautiously optimistic," the nurse replied, her voice tinged with professional caution. "Her condition is serious, but if the surgery goes well, she'll have a fighting chance." Early the next morning, the ICU buzzed with nervous energy. Nurses checked vital signs, ensuring the mother was stable enough for anesthesia. Surgeons conferred with one another, reviewing final details. Keanu arrived inconspicuously, once again choosing the corridor rather than the waiting room. From a short distance, he watched the boy pace in anxious loops near the operating theater's doors. A swirl of emotions contorted the child's face: fear, hope, desperation. Keanu was about to step forward when an older nurse gently guided the boy to a nearby chair, urging him to rest. With that, the boy sat, burying his face in his hands. The tension in the hallway was thick, and no one seemed certain how to offer comfort. Finally, Keanu took a breath and walked over. "Mind if I sit?" he asked quietly, taking the seat beside the boy without waiting for a response. The boy recognized him instantly, surprise flickering across his features. After a beat, he nodded, his voice caught in his throat. They sat in silence, the beep of distant machines punctuating the moment. Keanu placed a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. "She's in good hands," he offered. "The doctors here are excellent." The boy swallowed hard, tears threatening to spill. "I'm so scared," he confessed in a trembling voice. What if she doesn't make it?" Keanu didn't sugarcoat the situation. "This is a big operation, but I believe in her strength, and I believe in you." His voice was calm, holding on to a quiet optimism. "It's okay to be scared, though. Anyone would be." The operating room doors swung open, and a group of surgeons in scrubs filed out, ready to begin. A nurse approached the boy, explaining that they were taking his mother in now and the surgery could last several hours. The boy stood, tears brimming, but he remained collected enough to nod. Keanu rose to his feet beside him, gently rubbing the boy's back. "Go wait in the lounge," the nurse suggested with a kind smile. "We'll keep you updated." The boy turned to Keanu. "Will you stay?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. For a moment, Keanu felt a lump rise in his throat. He realized how desperately the child needed someone in his corner. "I'll be right here," he promised. "I'm not going anywhere." They moved to a small waiting area with plastic chairs and a muted television broadcasting some daytime talk show. As the clock ticked on, the boy alternated between standing, pacing, and sitting with his head buried in his hands. Keanu stayed by his side, offering the occasional word of reassurance or a brief, supportive nod. When the boy's nerves got the better of him, Keanu guided him to the vending machine and returned with a bottle of water and a small bag of chips, though the boy had no appetite. Hours crawled by. Finally, a surgeon in green scrubs emerged, peeling off a surgical mask. He headed toward them, eyes seeking out the boy. Keanu felt the boy tense beside him, bracing for the news. The surgeon offered a tired but genuine smile. "She made it through," he said. "We were able to repair a significant portion of the damage. She'll need rest and follow-up, but she's stable for now." Tears of relief streamed down the boy's cheeks. Without hesitation, he threw his arms around Keanu, sobbing into his chest. Keanu held him gently, heart pounding with both relief and gratitude. This was the moment he'd hoped for, the reason he'd gone to such lengths. "Thank you," the boy choked out, still clinging to Keanu. "I don't know how. I don't know why, but thank you." Keanu stroked the boy's hair, letting him cry. A wave of warmth and humility washed over him. He'd done the right thing, and seeing the boy's reaction was more than enough. "She's going to be okay," he whispered. "That's all that matters." The day after the surgery, the hospital corridor felt transformed. Joyful relief tempered the usual clinical hush, and nurses moved with a lighter step. Word of the successful operation had spread, and whispers about an anonymous donor filtered through the halls. No one spoke openly about who might be behind it, but more than a few staff members cast curious glances whenever Keanu Reeves passed by in his unassuming coat. Early in the morning, he arrived yet again, passing the reception with a polite nod. He found the boy dozing in a chair beside his mother's room, a blanket draped around his shoulders. The boy had evidently refused to leave, unwilling to be more than a few steps away in case his mother woke. The vase of red roses, some petals now wilting, sat on a side table near the door, a testament to their shared ordeal. Keanu approached quietly, not wanting to startle him. A nurse nearby recognized him and murmured, "She's stable. The boy hasn't left since last night." Nodding in thanks, Keanu gently touched the boy's shoulder. The boy stirred, blinking as he looked up. When he recognized Keanu, relief washed over his features. "You're here," he said, voice hoarse from exhaustion. Keanu smiled kindly. "I told you I'd stay." A soft rustling came from inside the room. The boy shot to his feet and rushed in, with Keanu following. There, propped up against pillows, was the boy's mother, groggy but awake. An array of machines beeped softly, but the color in her cheeks was less pale than before. As soon as she saw her son, her eyes brightened, though she was too weak to speak much more than a whisper. "Mom," the boy breathed, tears gathering at the corners of his eyes. He reached for her hand, gingerly avoiding 4 lines and bandages. "You're awake," he said, voice trembling with gratitude. She squeezed his hand in return, managing a frail smile. Behind them, Keanu stood quietly, aware of how personal this moment was. The boy turned after a moment, beckoning Keanu closer with hesitant shyness. "This is he began, stumbling over words. He seemed unsure how to explain who Keanu was. The mother's gaze shifted to Keanu, and though she looked confused, she mustered what strength she had to offer a small nod of thanks. Her eyes, though tired, held gratitude so profound it needed no words. Keanu bowed his head slightly, keeping his voice gentle. "I'm just a friend. I'm happy to see you doing better." A nurse popped in to check vitals, and Keanu stepped back to the doorway, giving them space. As the mother and son exchanged whispers, tears, and soft laughter, he couldn't help but reflect on how a simple, spontaneous act in a flower shop had led him here. Once the nurse finished her checks, Keanu walked into the hallway, intending to give the family privacy. The boy followed him out, still clutching onto the edge of his mother's door, as if afraid to stray too far. "They said it was all paid for," he said, voice hushed. "I try to ask the nurses who did it, but no one will say. Was it you?" Keanu resisted the urge to deflect, reading the vulnerability in the boy's eyes. "I just helped," he admitted softly, "but that doesn't matter. What matters is your mom is safe." The boy's gaze dropped to the floor. "Thank you," he whispered, raw emotion making his voice quake. "I don't know how to repay you." Keanu placed a comforting hand on the boy's shoulder. "You owe me nothing. Just keep being the son who brings her roses. Keep loving her the way you do." In that moment, the boy broke into tears again, but they were tears of relief and gratitude, not despair. He hugged Keanu, who returned the embrace gently. The hallway was silent except for the muffled sounds of the hospital staff, but it felt like the entire world had paused to bear witness to their shared relief. A day later, doctors confirmed the mother's condition had stabilized enough for her eventual discharge. She still needed weeks of careful recovery, but the immediate danger had passed. When the day finally came, the mother sat in a wheelchair, holding a small potted rose plant that Keanu had brought as a gift. It was a subtle nod to the red roses that had symbolized so much throughout her ordeal. She looked up at Keanu, eyes shining with tears that spoke of words left unspoken. The boy, standing behind the wheelchair, wore an expression of boundless gratitude and a hint of lingering disbelief. Quietly, the mother managed to say, "I will never forget this." She was too tired for a longer speech, but her trembling voice carried the full weight of her thankfulness. Keanu knelt to meet her gaze. "Take care of yourself and that wonderful son of yours," he said gently. "He's quite a fighter, and so are you." With that, the pair left, mother and son venturing out into the city's sunlight. Roses in hand, hearts full of renewed hope. Keanu lingered, watching from a short distance as they disappeared into the crowd. A gentle breeze rustled the final petals on the potted rose, and he exhaled a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. He felt changed by the experience, more certain than ever that kindness, no matter how small it starts, can lead to extraordinary outcomes. A warm flush of gratitude and humility filled him. He gave a silent farewell to the hospital corridor, passing nurses and doctors who smiled knowingly, even if they didn't speak. Sometimes, Keanu thought, all someone needs is a nudge in the right direction, and a reason to believe that miracles still happen. The simple act of helping a boy buy a bouquet of roses revealed a deeper story that transcended any one person's kindness. In a single afternoon, Keanu Reeves discovered not only the heartbreak this child carried, but also the unwavering determination that drove him. From the bustling flower shop to the hushed corridors of the hospital, each step became a tapestry of compassion, courage, and renewed hope. By choosing to remain anonymous, Keanu reminded us that generosity doesn't require fanfare. His willingness to shoulder the cost of a life-saving surgery illustrated that acts of kindness can ripple far beyond the moment of giving. In saving the boy's mother, he offered them both a future, a chance to share more memories, more smiles, and more precious time together. Yet it wasn't just Keanu's action that stood out. It was the boy's unbreakable spirit. Day after day, he insisted on placing fresh roses by his mother's side, symbolic of the love and life he hoped would continue to bloom. That enduring devotion became a beacon that drew help to him. Sometimes, hope attracts miracles in ways we cannot predict. As the mother and son left the hospital with hearts brimming with gratitude, their tale left an indelible mark on everyone who witnessed it. It was a testament to how small gestures, a child's bouquet, a stranger's compassion, can converge to forge a remarkable outcome. And for Keanu, it was yet another reminder of the quiet power that lies in recognizing someone's need and acting on it without hesitation. In a world too often defined by hurried schedules and distant interactions, this story shines as a call to pause, look closer, and be the catalyst for hope in someone else's life. Indeed, the power of kindness can transform not just one life, but countless others along the way.